and welcome to Talk of the Bay for Tuesday, January 20th. On today's program, I'm very excited to welcome Jess Craven, an activist, political content creator, and the author of Chop Wood, Carry Water Daily Actions on Substack. Her goal is to help average Americans become more engaged in the political process and help elect more progressive lawmakers everywhere. When she isn't working to elect great Democratic candidates, recording the Practivist podcast, or making political content for social media, she's spending time with her amazing trans teenager, her husband, who likes woodworking, their two gray tabbies, Georgia and Francis, and their big lug of a dog, Dolly. Hello, Jess, and welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was a great description. It's
I
great
thought
to be
so
here.
too. So happy and grateful to have you on the program today. I want to start with how you're doing. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I think as an activist, I tend to be better than the average person because I'm not feeling paralyzed and like I don't know what to do. So since action seems to be a bit of an antidote, I think that I am doing better than many. But obviously super disturbed by everything happening in our country, concerned, very motivated to stop it, and feeling very fired up to regain our freedoms.
Yeah, that is what's on the line here. So let's just do a little bit of brief background for folks who aren't familiar with you, a brief history of your activism, what motivates you, what you have achieved, what you hope to achieve that you haven't yet, and just kind of how you got started and what your intention was.
Sure. Well, it's all kind of accidental, to be honest. I got into activism. I've always loved politics and been interested in it as sort of a spectator sport. But, when Trump was elected the first time, like probably millions of other people in this country, I had a real sort of transformation by fire of just feeling so horrified by what had happened and needing to do something about it. But it just, in my case, went sort of on rocket fuel. So, I think a lot of people got more active. I started sending out an email to a couple of family members with things that I was doing that I was finding from the internet and research. And they, told friends about it, and friends asked me to send them that email as well. And anyway, that evolved into a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water, which now, has 150,000 subscribers across the country and just really aims to give people small, manageable, curated actions that they can take every day to help, at this point, save our democracy and push the country in the right direction. Oh, sorry, I've got a dog in here.
Cute.
She just barked.
Dolly.
Yeah. So anyway.
So how do you curate those actions? Do you just read like a bunch of news and then and you take the things you're involved in and share them with subscribers, letting them know what you're doing?
Yeah, I do a great deal of research every day. I read a lot of Substacks, including Tom Hartman's. I heard he was on right before me. And, Robert Hubble, Heather Cox Richardson, Jay Quo, so many different political commentators. And then I do read New York Times to some extent, although I'm very leery of them in the last year or two. I think they've really dropped the ball. I watch some political content creators. I attend messaging meetings. I attend coalition meetings. I attend immigration reform meetings. I'm just kind of constantly sucking up information. And for whatever reason, I seem to have a tolerance for doing that. And then I almost feel like a distilling machine sometimes. Like it all comes into me. And then I try to kind of spit out just small things that people can do because I have a real appetite for information. I will read, white papers and just all kinds of navigator polling. I will follow, watch focus group meetings to see what voters who have soured on Trump are saying. Like, I love all that stuff, but most people don't want to do all that. So I take it all in and then try to just give people a little bit. Because I think, obviously we're all dealing with enormous amounts of overwhelm. I have a higher threshold, I think, than many people. So I take in as much as I can and then give people the things that we can do something about that are happening right now. And I think that's another thing that people struggle with is what can I do today about stuff that's happening now, as opposed to things I'm worried about down the line that we can't do anything about right now. So I also try to kind of parse that out for folks.
Well, I want to make sure we get to an action portion in a few minutes, and what we can do today, we're going to talk about that. But I do want to say I'm very grateful that you have that higher threshold net tolerance for this stuff, because I think a lot of people don't, myself included. If I see Trump come on the television, I have to plug my ears. I can't listen to him speak. It makes me too aggravated. I have to read about what he said later. And, there's just a lot. It's hard to take. So I'm very grateful for that. So I wanted to mention that you were interviewed by another programmer here at KSQD, Amy Chin Mills, back in September of 2024, just before the last presidential election. And a couple of things that I remember you talking about in that interview were your belief that if Trump was elected again, it would be absolutely devastating to our democracy and to so many things. Is it as bad as you thought it would be, or is it worse?
It's worse. And I'll tell you, I was very well versed in how bad it was going to be. And that's part of the thing that's so astonishing about this entire situation. I don't actually believe there was electoral fraud in 2024. I think Americans did this. I mean, we see it from the exit polling. They did this. Like, not all of us, but enough people voted for him. Enough people stayed home. Enough people left the top of the ticket blank. And that, to me, is astonishing, because what is happening was there was a complete and total script for it. There was a recipe for it. It was published online. We knew. Now, they have taken it to the extreme of even
about Project
what they...
2025?
Yeah. Project 2025, every rally he did, the rally goers holding signs, screaming for mass deportation. These people are racism and xenophobia, like, boiled down to its most pure form. And we knew that they were serious about mass deportation. This was another thing I did a lot of content about before the election. I was trying to help people understand, like, let's set aside racism for a second. Do you care about your pocketbook? Because this is going to devastate our economy, but and our communities. But yeah, I don't know. We tried so hard. We tried so hard to get the word out, and it's incredibly frustrating that so many Americans walked into this situation blind, and I don't know how or why. We're really trying to improve, the content that we're getting out there. But yes, it is as bad as I thought it would be. It is far worse. I cried nonstop for a week after he was elected, because I knew this was coming, and I knew people were going to die. People were going to lose their families. People were going to lose their livelihoods, and here we are.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one of the reasons that he won was that a lot of people sat out the election, and it also seemed, well, I can only guess that racism and sexism were involved, given that his opponent was a woman of color. I also think I heard he was elected by a pretty slim margin. He can't really claim the mandate that he has. And then a lot of people voted on economic grounds, like, oh, the price of eggs is too high, as if he was going to come in and fix that. So can you tell me if that's an accurate kind of picture that I have? Or am I mistaken?
I mean, I think we had a perfect storm of people who were so angry about what's happening in the Middle East, understandably, but who decided they could not, vote for someone who was affiliated with Biden's administration. A lot of people who sat it out because of, racism or misogyny. We will never know for sure. But I think it's very safe to say that that was a large part of why people did not vote for Kamala Harris. And
maybe the belief that Democrats and Republicans weren't that different. Is that part of it as well?
Yeah, but that's that's a voter suppression tactic that goes back years and years. This, both parties are the same. I'm convinced that if you drill down to who was posting that, in 95% of the time, it is foreign governments having bots say that. It is such a sinister, subversive, effective tactic of just making people cynical and making them stay home. And then you have, Americans, it's a massive proportion of Americans are either completely checked out of politics or are passive news consumers, which means that they only get the news that either their friends send them or that shows up on their algorithm, usually on YouTube. And in a situation like that, you're dealing with people who are, let's just say, very prone to being misinformed. And They wanted to believe that Trump was going to fix the economy. He had a very strong propaganda machine saying that he would, even though many of us were screaming that he would do the opposite. But yeah, again, people were upset about the economy. So it's a combination of factors. I think we had a very strong, again, foreign interference operation going on that I think we won't understand for years. They were pushing third-party candidates, kind of really leveraging every division. And it was effective. It just worked very, very well.
Another thing you said in your interview back in 2024, just before the last presidential election, was when Amy was asking you some questions about what motivates you. One of the things you said was anger, and I thought that was interesting because I feel angry a lot, especially since the murder of Renee Good. I'm not saying she's the only one who's been murdered by ICE. There are many other folks who've been attacked, or seriously injured or even killed. So, but there was something about that killing that just, I have been angry every moment since then.
Yeah.
So, but I find my anger toxic. And I'm just wondering how you take your anger and turn it into something positive and productive and actually, getting things done and not just, I don't know. Some folks might drown in a bottle or eat too many chocolate cakes or something. How do you take it and do something good with it?
That's a really good question. I mean, for one thing, I haven't, I don't drink or do drugs, so that avenue is shut off from me. And but because of that, partially, I've developed a lot of other tools. So, it sounds really silly, but I know that things like getting out and taking a walk once a day, meditating, getting out with friends, going out and seeing art and culture, like those things are actually really important and help me stay balanced and fed so that when I turn around and come back to the fight, I'm not depleted. And the other thing that someone suggested a long time ago that I've really taken and run with is the idea that I am not fighting the bad guys as much as I am helping the good guys or the good side. And that little shift in attitude helps me a lot. So I am angry, but I'm angry in a very sort of empowered way of I know what these people are doing is wrong. It's wrong. I'm angry the way a mother is when someone mistreats their child. I'm angry and I feel protective and I feel very like mama bear energy. And I do encourage people to try to access that and channel it of like, I will be damned if these unbelievably pathetic, insecure, weak, mostly men are going to take our country and drag it down. Like that is no way am I going to let that happen on my watch. And so I encourage people to try to access a little bit of their self-righteous defiance. Americans are very defiant people. We have historically always been very defiant. We don't like to be told what to do. That's actually been at the root of lots of our conflicts. We don't like people telling us what to do. Well, here's a situation where the Trump administration is trying to put their foot on our neck. And so part of my job is to sort of try to tap into people's defiance, not in a way that makes it toxic rage, but that fuels them, that is a fire under them, that gives them energy and drive to fight back, because that is what we need. We need defiance channeled towards the Trump administration and the billionaires who are funding it, not towards each other. And I think we're getting there. I do. I think what we're witnessing in Minneapolis is an extraordinary, beautiful example. And we've seen it in every city, but it's grown in every city. ICE came to LA first, which is where I live. And we did a pretty good job, but there was, some Waymos got burnt, although I think that was actually probably people on the right who did that. But, there were we made some errors. We weren't as big as we could have been. It moved on to Chicago and then Portland. And we've seen every city sort of develop a resistance playbook that is more and more effective. And as Donald Trump and ICE are escalating, we are watching as the resistance and just regular people are escalating peacefully as well. I was seeing video today of people in Minneapolis who are at a Target. They all purchased a single container of salt, and then they all got in line, 70 people online, to return those containers of salt, to tie up the registers at Target, to protest the fact that Target is collaborating with ICE. This kind of peaceful resistance tactic is magnificent. It's effective. It's something that we just started seeing this year. And it works. And so I choose to sort of focus on the beautiful growth of the resistance, and I don't spend too much time staring at the terrifying growth of ICE and the evil powers on the other side, because that will just cow and exhaust me. So I try to be constantly fueled by the inspiration of the people around me. And that's another thing. That's why I send out good news roundups on Sundays. It's not just to give everybody a break, but it's to show people where resistance is working. And it's working in so many places and in so many ways. We just need to stick with it.
I want to remind folks, this is Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, George Cadman. I'm speaking with Jess Craven, an activist, political content creator, and the author of Chop Wood, Carry Water, Daily Actions on Substack. And her goal is to help average Americans become more engaged in the political process and help elect more progressive lawmakers everywhere. You're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM and 89.5 and 89.7 FM in Prunedale. Thank you for tuning in to your community radio station. So there are so many attacks on our democracy, our rights, our bodies, and those are the ones that we love every day now, that it's really hard to know where to begin. There are the attacks on our fundamental rights, on the Constitution, on the judiciary, on the free press, on free speech, on our voting rights, on government itself. They're dismantling it and replacing it with their Project 2025 authoritarian vision and turning it into a tool for their a tool they control. There's attacks on immigrants, diversity, LGBTQ plus folks, on legal observers, other activists who are fighting to preserve what rights we have left. I mean, I could go on science, on the environment, on education, on funding, from everything from research on climate change to mental health and substance abuse treatment. And they're rewriting history and lying to us in the present moment about what's actually happening in our country, as well as projecting power outside of this nation in disturbing ways. Venezuela, Greenland. So anyway, let's get into how we respond in an effective way, because this feels very overwhelming to most people. Ordinary Americans who are just trying to raise families and survive in this tidal wave of attacks on our freedom, our democracy, our well-being might be drowning. So what works and what doesn't? What tactics do you believe are the most effective and powerful? And tell me about some of your recent newsletters and what kind of daily actions you've offered folks recently to engage in.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. It's a big question. One thing I suggest for anybody who can is to find a local group of some kind. It's really vital that we are not trying to do this alone. I'm in all kinds of groups that meet weekly, groups of content creators and groups of progressives, and, Indivisible is a big part of my activism. The first thing I always tell people when they say, what do? I always tell them, try to join your local Indivisible chapter. Not that that's the only thing to do, but Indivisible has chapters almost everywhere in the country and in lots of countries in other countries, and not the U.S. at this point. And Indivisible chapters they take local actions, so they tend to be very focused on their local lawmakers and politicians, which is so very important. They work on elections of Congress members and state legislators in their area, but they're also kind of plugged into the main Indivisible team, the big one. And that team meets every week with chapter leaders, and sort of there's a general plan that everybody is sticking to. I find that that's really effective. I am a huge admirer of Indivisible. Right now, we've been working on, Indivisible has been pushing this, but also the ACLU and a lot of other groups, to push Democrats in Congress to not pass more funding for ICE and not pass any DHS funding bill as we come up to this January 30th deadline that does not put major guardrails on ICE. And this is the kind of place, it's a little wonky, but we do have influence and strength. Right now, we are fighting moderate and weak Democrats, some of our Democrats who are sort of wanting to cave, and then the ones who are fighting back. So this is a great example of what I was talking about before. Instead of throwing our hands up and looking at those however many Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Jeffries, who are weak and moving the wrong direction on this and saying, oh, all Democrats suck. I look at the ones who are doing well. Chris Von Hollen, the senator who is saying, I will not give any more funding to ICE until we have major reform, and all these other senators and Congress members who are doing the right thing. And I look at what they're doing and I say, how can I help? Can I call my representative and tell him or her that they should join that side? Can I talk to other people whose Congress members or senators need a push and encourage them to call? So we've got a sort of focused fight right now. Now, yes, there's a million other things happening right now, but this is a pivotal moment where we have some real control over ICE funding. So in my newsletter, I've been focusing a lot on this. But of course, we always want to focus on other things as well. So we are also talking about Trump and his insane, moronic, embarrassing letter to Norway, which is not even the right country, complaining to them about how they didn't give him the Nobel Prize. Like, this is very embarrassing. It's humiliating for our country because he got every fact wrong in the letter, and it's just embarrassing that he's, complaining about not winning the Nobel Prize. So we're also talking to Congress about the 25th Amendment. And every day we sort of look at the biggest fires and go, is there something here I can do something about? And also remembering that, like, you talked about the funding cuts. And I'm sure you probably know this, but Congress has been very quietly restoring a whole bunch of that funding. They've restored almost all of the funding to science agencies that Trump cut. They restored all of that funding for mental health that they cut just last week. That immediately got restored in 24 hours. And a lot of the environmental funding to the blue states that got cut, that also just got restored by a judge. Now, that's not to say that everything's hunky-dory, but there are a lot of levers moving. And a lot of what Trump tries to do, while very upsetting, does not succeed. He is constantly having to drop efforts to do X, Y, or Z because it fails. Either the courts stop him or public opinion is so strong against it that they sort of quietly backpedal. So I try to look for actions that are not being addressed by the courts, because the courts are going to do the courts. I can't control that. That are not being addressed by, Democrats on a committee that I can't really influence, but that are maybe something that I can influence by getting people to call Congress or by holding a protest. Sometimes we work on economic boycotts. Right now, there's a lot of pressure on companies like Target and Enterprise and Hilton because they are helping ICE in Minneapolis. And so this week, and Spotify, right. And we've just seen that Spotify very quietly terminated, they allowed their contract with ICE to expire. It is unclear whether that was just the natural expiration of the contract. But I will tell you that ICE has got a huge, banging amount of money that they are spending on advertising, and they are not spending that with Spotify now. So whatever happened, I think Spotify is trying to play it very, very cool so that they don't get boycotted by the other side. But I'm pretty sure that our pressure campaign got them to drop those ICE ads. And so we just have to keep going. It is a multi-front battle. We've got to be extremely conscious about what we're spending our money on. And this is one thing I tell everybody who says, what can I do? I tell them to join an Indivisible chapter. I tell them to start looking at where they are spending. This is a moment where our spending choices are hugely political and hugely impactful. Everybody can drop Amazon, which is basically working directly with not only the Trump administration, but with ICE, right? Everybody can boycott Target. Everybody can boycott Spotify, although maybe less important now because they seem to have stopped running those ads. We can boycott Enterprise and Hilton until they stop helping ICE. These are concrete things we can do. And to anybody who says, oh, but I love Amazon. I love it. It's so convenient. I mean, look, first of all, I understand there are people, especially people with disabilities, who have to use Amazon. There are people in rural areas who have no choice, but there are many, many, many people who do have a choice, but just like the convenience. And my question to you is it convenient to have ICE banging down the doors of U.S. citizens and dragging them out into the street and maiming them? Because that's what we're having.
That is happening.
And it's not going to stop until we use every lever at our disposal. So I really encourage people to look at where they can make these kinds of decisions and make them even if they're a bit inconvenient, because we've reached that point now. Mm-hmm.
I want to mention that in Santa Cruz, we have a local Indivisible chapter in Santa Cruz County. Indivisible, I can't remember the exact title. They changed it. It's Indivisible of Santa Cruz County, I believe. And they have action teams, I think about 12 of them at this point, that allow you to focus with your set of skills and passions. So they have like education and media and immigration. They have an immigration action team, and there's environment, et cetera. So you don't have to do it all. You join Indivisible as a larger group, but you pick an action team or two to focus with your skills. And
absolutely. And these groups like Indivisible Santa Cruz, I know this group, they have been around for almost 10 years at this point. So these are really seasoned groups with leadership that's been around, but it's also being infused with new members. They know what to do. This is not the resistance of 10 years ago. People are very smart. We're very nimble. We've got all these new tactics. We've got visibility brigades. If any of you have been driving under an underpass and seen the signs up above that are, sort of tailored to whatever is happening that week, those visibility brigades are happening all over the country. You can join a visibility brigade at visibilitybrigade.org, I believe, or .com. There's a million things happening, and that's the great news, is that, you don't have to figure it out. You can join a group where people will put you on a team or on a committee, and you can help do what. Maybe you're good at editing. You can edit their newsletter. Maybe you're good at making signs. You can draw their posters. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with doing. But at this point, I think that if we are on the side of democracy, we all need to be doing something.
Mm-hmm. I want to add just quickly that in Santa Cruz, we had a recent victory. The city of Santa Cruz, after a lot of public interaction with the city council and pressure from the community, voted 6-1 to terminate their contract with Flock Safety. And they provide the ALPR cameras, the automated license plate reader cameras that, and the city of Santa Cruz and Capitola had shared information with ICE, which is against state law and against our, we consider ourselves a sanctuary city, and this was a mistake apparently. But anyway, that was a huge victory. So huge. I just wanted to use that as an example of things that do happen on the local level that actually make a difference. Those cameras are gathering data that isn't even owned by our city. It's owned by Flock Safety, which is a very problematic company. But the show isn't about Flock Safety, so I'm not going to get deep into that. But it was a huge victory, and it just was ordinary folks in Santa Cruz speaking up and taking action, on a variety of levels. Some people can't devote tons of hours to it. Some people just write a letter or go to a city council meeting and speak at the mic for 3 minutes, and other people are in conversation with city council and actually, and going out in the streets and stuff like that, or coming on the radio and being guests on this show. So people don't necessarily have to dedicate 24/7 to it. If you're busy, maybe you're doing a little less, but as you said, doing something. Yeah. So I want to talk about hope. You've written recently about the midterm elections coming up. You've written about public opinion polls that seem to, overwhelmingly people don't agree with ICE tactics. Americans, ordinary Americans.
No, they don't.
And these things you've talked about giving you hope, and also the community response in Minneapolis and elsewhere with folks supporting one another and supporting their neighbors and the immigrant community. So can you talk about hope with a focus on those things, the midterm elections, the public opinion polls that came out recently, and the community response that we've seen in Minneapolis and elsewhere, where people are very vocal and doing what they can to support their neighbors?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, there's been a lot of polling about ICE, for example. 59% of Americans think ICE actions over the past year have been too aggressive. This is according to Navigator. 57% of independents say that ICE has gone too far. That is really important. Quinnipiac, by a 57 to 40% margin, Americans disapprove of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws. And we have to remember that when Trump came into office the second time, ICE had a positive approval rating. They were the opposite of underwater, right? And more Americans approved of them than not. That has flipped, and their approval rating is plummeting. Trump's approval rating is plummeting. 58% of Americans now believe that Trump's second term it's a failed term. His is a failed presidency, right? So people say, well, why does that matter? It doesn't matter. Polling can't save us. It can't, but we have to remember that we will have midterm elections in November. I really wish people would not say that we're not going to have midterms. It's very destructive. Midterms can't be canceled. They've never been canceled in the history of our country, not during wars, not during the Civil War, not during World War II. States hold the elections. The federal government has zero control. Trump could not cancel our midterms unless he passed a law. If Congress passed a law, maybe. But he can't do it. And so we're going to have midterms. And you have to remember, every single member of Congress is up for re-election. And then how many? 36, some number of senators are up for re-election. If we don't have midterms in November, we'll have no Congress members. There will be no one in the House come January 1st because their terms will all have expired. We will also be short 36 senators. And guess who will have the majority because of who is up for re-election this term? Democrats. So we're going to have midterms, and these politicians are all thinking about what is going to happen in November, and they are looking at the polling, and they are looking at the protests, and they are looking at public opinion, and they are thinking, I'm going to lose. They're looking at the fact that just 3 days ago, Cook moved 18 House seats to the left. They moved 18 House seats towards Democrats. We are every day seeing new polls saying that Trump's policies are getting less popular. And quietly, there was an Axios article last week that no one was really talking about, saying that, Trump's administration is starting to realize like their immigration actions are alienating voters. They're starting to look at ways they can quietly pull back. Now, will they? I don't know. I'm not going to say that is going to save us, but there is a correlation, right? If Trump continues the way he's going, he becomes more and more toxic as we get closer to elections, and we will start to see more Republicans peel away from him. And remember, Republicans have tiny majorities in both the House and the Senate. They cannot afford to lose, especially in the House. They can lose 2 votes right now. 2 votes. They can't afford to lose many people, and people are getting more and more upset. The Epstein files have not come out. They were supposed to be fully released 30 days ago. Even Trump voters are upset about it. And so I do feel that Trump is heading in one direction and one direction only. He will never moderate. He is not going to do anything to make himself more popular. He has lost the thread. He has terrible political instincts at this point. And Americans are disgusted with him. So yes, this is a terrible moment. Yes, it is a long time until November. Yes, I know more people will die. More horrible things are going to happen. It is I do not look forward to one moment of the next 8 months. But I also do feel that one way or another, we are going to get through this, and we are going to absolutely destroy them in the midterms. And when we do that, Democrats, we are going to push them, and we are going to start to see some accountability. Now, does that mean everything's going to be great? No, this is a ongoing slog, to push Democrats to be more liberal, to push Democrats to be more aggressive. All of this is going to take work on our part. But what I am seeing in the resistance right now is giving me a tremendous amount of hope. And the resistance is not separate from you. Anyone listening right now, you are the resistance. The resistance is American people. The American people are saying, I don't like this. I hate this. Their views of immigrants are getting more positive. Their views of ICE are getting less positive. That abolishing ICE has more favor now than it has ever had before. So what I think will happen is that we are going to see a giant backlash against everything that's happening. Trump is overreaching. I was listening to someone in your previous show saying this, and it's really true. He's tried for too much, too fast, while simultaneously not doing anything at home that Americans are happy about. Most dictators succeed partially because they've given something to their people that the people love. Trump has given us nothing. He's given us nothing. He's tanked the economy. He's tanked our healthcare system. And so this overreach combined with his failure at home is making Americans very unhappy. That is important. It matters. So I know this is hard. We've got to stick it out. We've got to keep fighting. We've got to stay peaceful. We're going to get through this. And we are going to push this pendulum so far back in the opposite direction that Republicans will wish that the name Donald Trump did not even exist. I will keep fighting until we have Medicare for all. I will keep fighting until we have a billionaire tax. I will keep fighting until we have paid family leave. All of it. We are going to keep fighting. And I believe that this misery that we are living through right now is actually fertilizing the ground for the transformation that is going to happen in this country afterwards.
We have a caller, John. Hello, John. You're on the air with Jess Craven of Chop Wood, Carry Water Daily Actions. Do you have a question for Jess?
Well, I have a question about Flock. And do you know who the dissenting vote was in the city council?
It was Sonia Bruner. But do you have a question for my guest?
Actually, not a question.
Okay. Well, do you have a quick comment she can respond to?
It was one thing about the Epstein files. If you listen to Tom Hartman today, he said the Epstein file debate, whatever, is gone because there are no teeth to people who do not follow the need to release him. But he said there's no reason that they should release it if they're trying to cover it. So, comment.
Thank you for that. Did you have a response to that, Jess?
That the Epstein file conversation is gone? Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think it is gone. I mean, I think that they will. Yes, they are not going to release anything, but that's super damning. I was on this this focus group with disenchanted Trump voters last week. I got to observe it. That was one of the things they brought up over and over again. Really, really upset. These are people who voted for him 3 times. And they are horrified at the fact that he is clearly covering this up. They notice. They're not stupid, although sometimes we say they are, but they see that they have been gaslit in this regard, and that is continuing. And also, the last thing I'll say is don't forget that House Oversight has also been producing a tremendous amount of evidence on their own with the Epstein estate, and that has nothing to do with the files being released. I don't think Massey and Kana are out of tricks yet. I don't. I think we're going to see more on this.
I want to invite listeners to call in at 831-900-5773. That's 831-900-5773. If you have a question for my guest, Jess Craven, again, author of Chop Wood, Carry Water, Daily Actions, political content creator, and she's also on TikTok and Instagram. On social media. We already have a call, but I want to ask you a question while Howard screens that call. I want to talk about voting rights because I just read news recently that the postmark date is going to be changed on when you drop your mail at the post office. They're going to change that postmark date, not the day you dropped it, but the day they processed it. And this seems to be a pretty clear attack on voting. I mean, that's including all the attacks on the Voting Rights Act, on removing ballot boxes and attacking early voting. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. Now, this is how, Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to try to mess with the elections. It's nothing as sinister as canceling the elections, although I'm sure Trump would love to do that, but it's just not realistic. But yeah, they are going to mess with vote by mail. They are going to mess with polling places. They will do everything in their power, up to and possibly including, trying to post troops or ICE agents at ballot boxes, although they don't have nearly enough people to do that everywhere. But yeah, they'll suppress the vote in every way they can.
So what do we do about that? Just vote early? Or make sure we are going to register everybody?
Yeah, we're going to have to. We are going to have to think about this like a patriotic project that is of the utmost importance. Every single person is going to have to take responsibility for their vote in a way that maybe before they didn't have to think about as seriously. Checking our voter registration every month, especially if we live in a red state, because red states do these purges, right? Checking our voter registration, making sure our ID is up to date, making sure that our address is up to date. If we've moved, just making sure that we've crossed all of our T's, dotted our I's, and then, yes, voting on the first day of early voting. And I will tell you my little spiel about this. If you don't know, everybody, this is very important. Early voting wins elections for us, and here is why. So this is something that Democrats have really been trying to get the message out about, but when our reliable voters, the people who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to vote, and of course I'm voting for Democrats, when y'all go out and vote on day one, we have to remember the voter rolls get updated every day, and all of the people whose votes have been tabulated come off of those voter rolls. And as those people come off, volunteers and phone bankers and canvassers are going to be reaching out to the people who are harder to turn out, or who maybe need a little bit of help, or who maybe need a ride, or are a little unclear on their polling place. So the more knowledgeable, informed, constant Democratic voters vote on day one, the more of them come off the voter rolls, the more opportunity we have to reach out to and help the less sort of certain voters. And we're just going to need to make a concerted effort to counteract this voter suppression. And then as soon as we win majorities, the first thing Democrats need to do is pass the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which we came very close to passing if it weren't for Kyrsten Sinema when Biden was president, and we just need to pass immediately. But yeah, they will try every trick in the book. So talk to your friends and family. Tell them do not mail your ballot a day before the election.
Yeah.
You must walk it in, bring it to a drop box, or better yet, go vote in person. That's the best
But make
thing
sure
we can
that if you vote
possibly
in
do.
person, make sure in advance that you're still registered and that you have the proper identification and everything. We have a caller online. Hello, caller. You're on Talk of the Bay with Jess Craven. This is Lynn.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Lynn.
This is Len B.A. So kind of a follow-on to the discussion you're just having now about how there's so much effort by the Republican Party to essentially skew the vote and suppress the vote. They're purging voters again in lots of states. We know about the gerrymandering that they're doing, and they're also, trying to take away mail-in ballots. They're trying to make it more difficult, for states to have early voting, et cetera. And in many cases, they're successfully getting rid of it. And it seems like the intention here is not so much to, win favor at all. It's purely to keep people from being able to vote or having their votes counted. And to me, if I dare, when I can handle it, and tune in to right-wing media for a little while, the narrative they're putting out is in fantasy land, and it's completely different than what you're talking about here. And I really appreciate your optimism, but when I listen to the right-wing media, it's hard for me to be optimistic because I know people who only listen to that.
Good point.
And they're getting a completely different narrative. And so I wonder if you could just talk about, the fact that we're dealing with a corrupt, fascistic party that's willing to go to any ends available to prevent votes from being counted or even made. And secondly, that the media, has changed in the last 30 years. And part of that has been a very intentional program to affect what people believe and what they know and don't know.
Let's get Jess's response.
If you could talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your call in. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn, for that question. And yeah, I mean, the media environment is awful. There is certainly a lot of propaganda. I mean, we've seen the Trump administration at this point. It's not even propaganda. It's a string of lies all the time. And they have a very powerful machine working behind them, probably, again, partially funded by foreign governments. It is very in lockstep. And as a content creator, I can tell you that on the left, if content creators even think about getting paid by anybody, there is a massive uproar. Meanwhile, on the right, content creators are being paid huge amounts of money to, coordinate messages with the RNC and with Trump. So we have a little bit of a herding cats on the left where the information environment is just much more scattered. But we're improving. It is improving. Yes, Fox News is a nightmare. Yes, if you are listening to far-right radio, you are brainwashed to think that, undocumented people are voting in elections in huge numbers. I mean, this stuff is all absurd. And you can actually find right-leaning policy organizations who have found that is factually absolutely untrue. The Cato Institute did a big study on it. But yes, very difficult to get the truth out to these people. But the good news is we don't need those people. And you've seen this because the right-wing media environment has been around, right? It's been here this whole time. And look what happened last year. We overperformed by an average of 16%, and in many cases, much more. In election after election after election. November's elections I've been involved in a lot of elections now. That was the most insane sweep we have seen yet. And that is with the right-wing media ecosphere working overtime to defeat us. That is with billionaires dumping money in to defeat us, right? To a certain extent, yes, Americans can be lied to, and many of them are disillusioned and lied to and believe things that are not true. But the vast majority of Americans are getting the truth somehow because we are overperforming in every single election. I don't think there are enough right-wing content creators in the world to convince Americans that what is happening right now is okay. Trump keeps telling them there's no such thing as an affordability crisis. We all know what things cost. We all go to the grocery store. Trump doesn't. But we do. You can't propagandize your way out of the fact that we are all spending an insane amount of money on everything, right? You can't propagandize your way out of ICE attacking citizens, shooting the eyes out of 21-year-old college students who are citizens. All of this stuff, you can only propagandize so far. And it is up to every single one of us, however. We have to remember that, yes, there are people getting their news from Fox. They probably voted for Trump anyway. We don't have to win them over. We have to turn out our voters. When our voters turn out, and a good proportion of the independents who are disgusted with Trump, by the way, we win. And let me tell you something else let's use the gerrymandering as a great example. So Trump started this gerrymandering war, right? We're going to gerrymander Texas so that we win. And we're going to gerrymander a bunch of other red states. Well, Democrats fought back. They said, okay, if you're going to do that, we're going to fight back and we're going to do partisan redistricting in California. We succeeded. In Maryland, that's moving ahead. In Virginia, that's moving ahead. So, and then on top of that, Trump and Republicans made these assumptions about what kind of voters they were going to have in these new districts that they've drawn, basing their assumptions on 2024 performance, where they got a huge amount of new Latino and Black voters, for example, and those voters have all returned to Democrats. So now what have they done? They have maybe drawn themselves into a situation where they lose seats that they thought would be guaranteed to them because they've done something called a dummy mander. And I guess all of this is to say that there are a lot of things I can't control. But what I can control is working my ass off to make sure that we turn voters out, educating everybody I know about voting early, making sure their registration is up to date, and also trusting that, Republicans are so greedy and so corrupt and so dishonest and, quite frankly, so stupid at this point that they keep sort of, figuratively speaking, shooting themselves in the foot. And so I'm not going to count on them to, defeat themselves, but they are not doing themselves any favors. Their entire gerrymandering effort, which has cost millions and millions of dollars, taken up God knows how many hours of legislative time, it's going to be a wash in the end. So we're going to win anyway. So I guess it's just to say, yes, they are doing everything they can, but we are not potted plants, as my friend Robert Hubble says. We have agency too. We have the smartest people in the country on our side. The most creative people in the country on our side, shrewd people, very brilliant people who are predicting every move and planning a counterattack. So I guess I would just say, don't underestimate our side and just let's do the work. Let's do the work, operate in good faith, do everything we can, and have a little bit of faith that Republicans are so greedy and corrupt at this point that they're honestly making one unforced error after another. And, we're going to beat them. I'm sorry. I just know that we are.
Well, if we work hard, we will. We have another caller.
Absolutely.
Jim. Hello, Jim. You're on the air with Jess Craven. You have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I hear what you're saying, Jess, as being, in a way, a parallel to what's happened on the right. We need to mobilize our base. We need to get our people out, and we need to push harder to make sure that they vote early and often. The question is, what about every place in the world is not Santa Cruz, California, or even California? We have to win in places like Montana, where John Tester says he's not even running. His favored candidate is a Democrat. He has to run as an independent. We have to win in Iowa. We have to win in South Dakota. We have to win in Alaska. And when those people start hearing Medicare for all, I'm just wondering how much energy do we want to spend in bringing in people, new people, instead of primarying out our own candidates who aren't liberal enough?
Well, I'm not sure we are primarying out candidates who aren't liberal enough. In Alaska, we've got Mary Peltola, who I think everyone's really excited is running. She's not liberal. She's very, centrist, but she's the right candidate for that district. And in Montana, same thing. I think that Democrats are, saying that they're frustrated that an independent is running, but we can't win with a far left Democrat in Montana. So I think that strategically they're doing the right thing by sort of backing out of that situation and letting an independent run against the Republican, who will likely caucus with Democrats. I think it's a state-by-state, district-by-district thing that the DNC, while I still have major arguments with many, many things they say and do, has a fairly decent guy in charge now. He's better than what we had before. Let's just say that, Ken Martin. And that they are putting a lot of money in the right places and running candidates who are right for their location. We had Mikey Sherrill run in New Jersey. I have a very progressive audience. My audience felt that she wasn't progressive enough, but she was the right candidate for New Jersey. And now she's in and she'll do a great job, I think, for her state. Same in Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is a fairly centrist Democrat. She was the right candidate for that state. She won by massive margins. They both did. So, yeah, look, Medicare for all is not on anyone's menu at the moment. Many Democrats, most Democrats at this point support it, as well as a substantial number of independents and Republicans even. But Chuck Schumer's not talking about Medicare for all for this year's elections. So, progressives in certain districts will, and then in other districts, they will not. And that's okay. We have bigger conversations to have about what Democrats want to do when we get full power back. But right now, this is the midterms. We're not passing Medicare for all until we have a Democratic president and good majorities in both chambers. Right now, we are in survival mode. We are trying to rob back the majority in the House. And I believe we can take the Senate back as well. But this is to staunch the worst of the bleeding and start some accountability. Because remember, when Democrats get control of one of the chambers in Congress, they get subpoena power, which is a big difference. And so we can start to actually have some real committee hearings, although, again, it will really take us having full control before the real accountability comes. But I hope that answers your question.
That makes sense, what you're saying. And I'm sure that's why Trump is doing everything he can right now ahead of the midterms, really trying to beat the clock, so to speak.
Absolutely. He's fully panicking because he knows his time is running out. He knows he is going to lose his majorities in the midterm. And he is very aware that everything they want to get done, they need to try to get done in the next, 6 to 8 months. And this is why everything is ramping up. And he's acting like a cornered animal. This is what cornered animals do. They ratchet up, they lash out. It's not logical. It's not winning him any sort of popularity battles, and it's overreach. It's a mistake, especially in the United States. So yeah, I think it's a real strategic miscalculation, and I think he knows he's going to lose.
Thank you for your call, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
You're tuned to Talk of the Bay here at 90.7 FM. I'm your host, George Cadman. I'm speaking with Jess Craven, an activist, political content creator, and the author of Chop Wood, Carry Water Daily Actions on Substack. She also is on social media, TikTok, Instagram. Her goal is to help average Americans become more engaged in the political process and help elect more progressive lawmakers everywhere. And I want to mention that we only have about 7 minutes left in the show, so if you have a question or a comment for my guest, Jess Craven, please call in at 831-900-5773, 831-900-5773. And given that we only have a short time left in the show, unless we get a call, I'd like to focus on actions. And if you could let listeners know, if they don't already know, how to access your Substack, how to find you on Instagram and TikTok and anywhere else. If you still have a podcast, how they can listen to that, just how they can connect with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, I am at Jess Craven 101 on all social media. So on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, at Jess Craven 101. Actually, my friend Louisa is listening to the show right now. She's in Santa Cruz, and she's the one who got me onto TikTok in the first place. So I need to give her a shout out. But yeah, so I'm on all of those. My Substack is called Chop Wood, Carry Water Daily Actions on Substack. And I encourage people to sign up for my newsletter if getting information that way works for you. It is free. There's a paid option, but there's no difference between the free and the paid because I want everybody to have access to it. I also encourage you to download the 5 Calls app. I'm not associated with it, but everybody I know uses it. It's great. It's an app that will give you scripts for a whole bunch of different issues. And it also phone numbers for your representatives where you live. You just enter, your address and a little bit of information, and then it provides you tailored scripts for your reps. It is fantastic. And whenever something new comes up in the news, they will have a new script for you. So I love 5 Calls. If you want a little bit more of a personal touch, you can subscribe to my newsletter. But there's a lot of great resources out there right now. And yeah, I just hope people don't choose this moment to despair and give up. We can feel really sad and upset, but this is a moment where people power is the thing that is going to save us. It is not going to be the Democratic Party. It is not going to be corporations. It is not going to be the Supreme Court. It's going to be us. And we totally can do it. And we will do it. We just need more people who are listening right now and going, well, but I don't do that kind of thing. No, but we need you. We need you to do a little something. And you'll feel good. You'll feel better when you do it. You'll feel empowered, and you'll suddenly feel like, oh, I can do this. Even if it's just showing up to a local protest in your town, we need you all to get involved, because once we get that mass movement of Americans peacefully saying no more of this, the dominoes are going to start to fall, and we will, overthrow this dictatorial regime.
Tell me about the name of your Substack and your other social media, Chop Wood, Carry Water, how you selected that and why.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good way to close. Chop wood, carry water is a phrase I learned from my dad when I was going through a really terrible divorce when I was 35. And he had been through many divorces, not many, but a couple. And I was in so much pain, and it was so kind of relentless. It seemed like I just could not get past the pain of this divorce. I was living with him because I lost the place I lived, and was talking to him one day, and I was like, how do I get through this if this is going to be such a long, painful process? Because he had said, oh, you might feel this bad for 2 years. I said, how do you get through this? He said, well, you're going to just chop wood, carry water, wake up every day, do the thing you can do right in front of you to do, make your bed, go to work, and just trust that, like, if you do that for enough days in a row, you're going to get through this. And one day you'll wake up and it will finally be behind you. And that's a tool I used every day at that time. And one day I did wake up. I was through it. It was behind me. And so when Trump was elected the first time, it was the first phrase I thought of as people asked me, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know, but we're going to chop wood, carry water. And so every action I take and every action I give my readers and my followers is just another chop wood. It's another carry water. It's a thing we can do today. And if we take those actions, I am certain that, first of all, we will get through this relatively sane and with less anxiety than we would have otherwise. And secondly, that we will prevail. I am just positive of it. So that's why the newsletter is called that.
Thank you so very much for joining me on Talk of the Bay today, Jess Craven. I know you're very busy, and I know my listeners really appreciate it, and I certainly do as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, George, thank you for having me. It's been delightful, and thank you to all the people who called in. It's been really fun to talk to a couple people in beautiful Santa Cruz. I love it there.
It's pretty great. Well, thank you again, and we will, after we hang up, we'll make sure everybody knows how to connect with you. Again, I'll repeat all that. Thank you again. Take care.
Okay, George, thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So again, Jess Craven is Chop Wood, Carry Water on Substack, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. That's how you can connect with her. And she has all kinds of basic actions that you can do with her daily newsletter that are not, it depends on how much time you have. There's some that are more time consuming and some less, but that's how you connect with her. And also she mentioned Indivisible of Santa Cruz County. Their website is indivisiblesantacruzcounty.com if you want to connect with Indivisible of Santa Cruz County. And just appreciate all you listening. And thank you to the callers who called in. This has been Talk of the Bay.